A 24-year-old nurse delivered a premature baby at 30,000 feet when a billionaire's wife went into emergency labor. What happened next changed everything. The request she made afterward left the tech mogul in tears and shocked everyone on board. This isn't just a story about saving lives, it's about courage, sacrifice, and a moment that redefined what it means to be a hero. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac at Chicago. O'Hara's Amanda Rodriguez hurried through the bustling terminal, her worn leather messenger bag bouncing against her hip. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and despite having worked a double shift at Children's Memorial Hospital in Denver, just 12 hours earlier, her brown eyes held the alert intensity of someone who never truly switched off. From caring for others, Amanda wasn't supposed to be on this flight. She'd been heading home to visit her mother Rosa in Chicago when a last-minute gate change led to confusion at the ticket counter. The agent, flustered and apologetic, had somehow upgraded her to a seat on a private charter that was departing from the same gate. By the time anyone realized the mistake, Amanda was already walking across the tarmac toward the gleaming Gulfstream G650, its polished exterior reflecting the early morning light like a mirror. The luxury aircraft was unlike anything Amanda had ever seen. As she climbed the stairs, she caught her breath at the opulent interior. Cream leather seats that looked more like armchairs were arranged in conversation clusters, each with its own side table crafted from what appeared to be genuine mahogany. Crystal glasses gleamed from a fully stocked bar, and the carpet beneath her feet was so plush it seemed to absorb sound itself. Lisa Park, the head flight attendant, greeted Amanda with a professional smile that faltered slightly when she noticed Amanda's simple jeans and hospital sneakers. "Welcome aboard, Miss Rodriguez," Lisa said, consulting her tablet with a slight frown. "I believe there might be some confusion with your reservation." Amanda shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked among the polished luxury. "I think there was a mix-up at the gate," she admitted. "The agent said something about an upgrade, but honestly, I'm not sure I belong here." Before Lisa could respond, a deep voice interrupted from behind them. "Nonsense. Everyone belongs somewhere, and today you belong here." Amanda turned to see a tall man in his early 40s extending his hand toward her. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, and his charcoal gray suit probably cost more than Amanda made in a month. But his smile was genuine, reaching his blue eyes in a way that suggested warmth beneath the polished exterior. "Victor Sterling," he said, his handshake firm but not overwhelming. "And you must be the mysterious passenger who's caused such a delightful mix-up. Please, don't let anyone make you feel unwelcome." These sorts of serendipitous moments often lead to the most interesting conversations. Amanda felt her cheeks warm. "Amanda Rodriguez. And I really should find another flight. I don't want to intrude on what's obviously a private trip." Victor waved dismissively. "Absolutely not. We're heading to London for what's supposed to be a baby moon, though my wife Catherine might disagree about the relaxing part." His expression softened with obvious affection. "She's resting in the rear cabin right now. The pregnancy has been more challenging than we expected, especially these last few weeks." As if summoned by his words, a woman emerged from the back of the aircraft, one hand pressed to her lower back and the other resting on her prominently rounded belly. Catherine Sterling was strikingly beautiful, even in her obvious discomfort. With auburn hair that caught the cabin lighting and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She wore a flowing emerald dress that accommodated her pregnancy gracefully, though Amanda's trained eye immediately noticed how she moved with the careful deliberation of someone managing significant discomfort. "Victor, you're not monopolizing our unexpected guest, are you?" Catherine asked, her British accent adding an elegant lilt to her words. Despite her smile, Amanda could see the tightness around her eyes that spoke of persistent pain. "Catherine, meet Amanda Rodriguez," Victor said, guiding his wife to one of the plush seats with gentle attentiveness. "She's joining us for the flight to London, courtesy of what appears to be a very fortuitous booking error." Catherine settled into her seat with obvious relief, unconsciously rubbing her belly in slow circles. "How lovely. What takes you to London, Amanda? Business or pleasure?" Amanda hesitated, still feeling like an intruder in their intimate space. "Actually, I was just trying to get home to Chicago to visit my mother. I'm a nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital in Denver, and I haven't seen her in months because of my schedule." Catherine's face lit up with genuine interest. "A nurse? How wonderful. What kind of nursing do you do?" "I specialize in neonatal intensive care," Amanda replied, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke about her passion. "I work primarily with premature babies and high-risk pregnancies. It's challenging work, but incredibly rewarding when you can help bring a healthy baby into the world." Something shifted in the atmosphere as Amanda spoke. Victor and Catherine exchanged a look that Amanda couldn't quite interpret, but she sensed a sudden tension beneath their polite conversation. "How fascinating," Catherine said, though her voice had become slightly strained. "We're actually expecting our first child in about 10 weeks. It's been quite the journey, hasn't it, darling?" Victor's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Catherine's had some complications," he said carefully. "Gestational hypertension that's been difficult to manage. Her doctors in New York have been monitoring her closely, but they cleared her for this trip as long as we keep it brief." Amanda's professional instincts immediately sharpened. She studied Catherine more carefully, noting the slight puffiness around her eyes and hands, the way she shifted uncomfortably in her seat despite its obvious luxury. These were signs she'd learned to watch for during her years in the NICU, indicators that often preceded serious complications. "Have you been experiencing any unusual symptoms lately?" Amanda asked gently, her nurse training overriding social politeness. "Headaches, vision changes, unusual swelling?" Catherine started to shake her head, then paused. "Well, I have had quite persistent headaches the last few days. And my hands have been swelling more than usual, though Victor keeps saying it's just the altitude changes from traveling." Victor leaned forward slightly, his businessman's instinct to maintain control warring with obvious concern for his wife. "Her doctor said some swelling was normal, especially in the 3rd trimester. We're being cautious, which is why we're taking the private jet instead of a commercial flight." Amanda nodded diplomatically, though internally her concern was growing. The combination of symptoms Catherine was describing, particularly at 7 months pregnant, could indicate the development of preeclampsia, a serious condition that could be life-threatening for both mother and baby. But she was acutely aware that she was essentially a stranger who had stumbled into their private world, and the last thing she wanted to do was alarm them unnecessarily. "I'm sure your doctors know best," Amanda said carefully. "It's just that. In my experience, it's always better to err on the side of caution with pregnancy complications." Lisa Park appeared at Amanda's elbow with a crystal glass of orange juice. "We'll be taking off shortly," she announced. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, can I get you anything before we're airborne?" "Just some water for Catherine, please," Victor replied. "And Lisa, please make sure our guest has everything she needs. Amanda, I hope you'll consider yourself our honored companion for this journey." As Lisa bustled away to prepare for takeoff, Amanda found herself settling into the impossibly comfortable seat across from the Sterlings. The aircraft's engines began their low rumble, and she watched through the expansive windows as Chicago's skyline fell away beneath them. She'd flown commercially many times, usually cramped into middle seats with crying babies and impatient business travelers, but this experience felt almost surreal in its luxury and tranquility. Catherine had closed her eyes during takeoff, her breathing deep and measured in a way that Amanda recognized as someone trying to manage discomfort. Victor watched his wife with the intense focus of a man who was accustomed to controlling his environment, but found himself helpless in the face of his wife's condition. "Tell me about your work," Victor said once they reached cruising altitude, clearly seeking distraction from his worry. "What drew you to neonatal care?" Amanda's expression grew thoughtful, shadows of old pain flickering across her features. "I had a younger sister, Isabella. She was born when I was 16, about 10 weeks premature. My mother was working 2 jobs to support us, and she didn't have access to the best prenatal care. Isabella was so tiny, barely 3 pounds, and she fought so hard to live." She paused, her fingers unconsciously twisting the simple silver ring she wore on her right hand. "She made it for 6 weeks. Every day in that NICU, I watched the nurses care for her with such dedication and skill. They became like family to us, especially during those long nights when we didn't know if she'd make it through. Even after we lost her, they supported us, helped us grieve, showed us that her short life had mattered." Victor's expression had softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been devastating for your family." "It was," Amanda acknowledged. "But it also showed me what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be the person who could fight for babies like Isabella, who could give families hope even in the darkest moments. Every time I help bring a premature baby through a crisis, every time I can hand healthy twins to exhausted parents, I feel like I'm honoring her memory." Catherine had opened her eyes during Amanda's story, and tears were glistening on her cheeks. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Isabella was lucky to have you as a sister, even for such a short time." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the aircraft's communication system. Captain James Miller's voice filled the cabin with professional calm. "Good morning, everyone. We've reached our cruising altitude of 41,000 feet and are making excellent time. We should arrive in London about 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Weather looks clear all the way across the Atlantic." As the hours passed, Amanda found herself genuinely enjoying the Sterling's company. Victor was brilliant and driven, sharing stories of building his AI technology company from a college dorm room into a billion-dollar enterprise. But beneath his success, she could see a man who was deeply in love with his wife and terrified of anything happening to her or their unborn child. Catherine was equally compelling, a former art historian who had given up her position at the Metropolitan Museum to focus on preparing for motherhood. She spoke passionately about the charity work she'd taken on, particularly initiatives focused on improving maternal health care in underserved communities. "It's ironic," Catherine said as they shared an elegant lunch of grilled salmon and asparagus. "Here I am, with access to the best medical care money can buy, and I'm still struggling with this pregnancy. It makes me think about all the women who don't have those advantages, who are facing far greater challenges with far fewer resources." Amanda nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually something I've been passionate about too. So many complications could be prevented with better education and access to prenatal care. In the NICU, we see the consequences of inadequate early intervention all too often." Victor reached across to squeeze his wife's hand. "Catherine's been working on a foundation to address exactly those issues. Once the baby arrives and she's recovered, she wants to focus on creating mobile clinics that can reach women in rural and underserved areas." "That sounds incredible," Amanda said with genuine admiration. "The impact something like that could have on infant and maternal mortality rates would be enormous." Catherine's face glowed with enthusiasm as she began describing her vision for the foundation, but Amanda noticed that she kept shifting in her seat, pressing her hand to her back with increasing frequency. The headache that Catherine had mentioned earlier seemed to be worsening too, based on the way she occasionally pressed her fingers to her temples. They were approximately 4 hours into the 8-hour flight when Amanda's trained instincts began sending urgent signals. Catherine had excused herself to use the restroom, but she'd been gone for nearly 10 minutes. When she returned to her seat, her face was pale and there was a sheen of perspiration on her forehead, despite the aircraft's perfectly controlled temperature. "Everything all right, darling?" Victor asked, immediately noticing his wife's distress. Catherine attempted a reassuring smile, but Amanda could see the strain behind it. "Just feeling a bit off. The cabin pressure, I suppose, or maybe something I ate." Amanda felt her pulse quicken as her professional training kicked into high alert. Something about Catherine's demeanor, combined with the symptoms she'd mentioned earlier, was triggering every alarm bell in Amanda's medical intuition. She leaned forward slightly, studying Catherine's face with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years learning to read the subtle signs of medical distress. "Catherine," Amanda said gently, "I don't want to overstep, but would you mind if I asked you a few more questions about how you're feeling? Just to ease my own worry." Victor's attention snapped to Amanda with laser focus. "What kind of worry?" Amanda chose her words carefully, aware that she was potentially about to shatter the peaceful atmosphere of their journey. "Some of the symptoms you've described, combined with what I'm observing now, could potentially indicate a serious pregnancy complication. I may be completely wrong, and I hope I am, but I'd feel better if we could rule out a few possibilities." Catherine's hand moved instinctively to her belly, her green eyes widening with concern. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What kind of complications?" Before Amanda could answer, Catherine suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her head as her face contorted with pain. "Oh God," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Something's wrong. Something's really wrong." Victor was on his feet immediately, his face pale with terror. "Catherine, what is it? What's happening?" Amanda's training took over completely. She moved to Catherine's side with fluid professionalism, her gentle demeanor shifting into the pakotu, focused intensity of a medical professional facing a crisis. "Catherine, I need you to look at me. Can you describe the pain? Is it your head, your abdomen, or somewhere else?" "My head feels like it's going to explode," Catherine managed between gasps. "And I'm seeing spots, like flashing lights." "Victor, I'm scared." Amanda's heart sank as the pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The gestational hypertension, the increasing headaches, the swelling, and now the severe headache with visual disturbances, Catherine was showing clear signs of severe preeclampsia, a condition that could rapidly progress to life-threatening seizures or organ failure. And they were trapped at 30,000 feet, hours away from any hospital, with a pregnant woman who might be about to face the fight of her life. Amanda's mind raced through her medical training as Catherine's condition deteriorated before her eyes. The visual disturbances combined with the severe headache were textbook symptoms of eclampsia, a life-threatening progression of preeclampsia that could lead to seizures, stroke, or organ failure. At 30,000 feet with hours remaining until landing, they were facing a medical emergency with potentially catastrophic consequences. "Lisa!" Amanda called sharply to the flight attendant, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to crisis situations. "I need you to contact the captain immediately. We have a medical emergency." Victor knelt beside his wife's chair, his usual composed demeanor cracking as panic set in. "Amanda, what's happening to her? Tell me what's wrong." Catherine suddenly doubled over with a sharp cry, her hands clutching her abdomen. "Something's happening," she gasped. "Oh God, something's happening to the baby." Amanda's heart pounded as she recognized the signs of premature labor beginning. The stress of the preeclampsia was triggering contractions that could lead to an emergency delivery at 7 months gestation. In a hospital, This would be manageable with a full medical team and equipment. On an aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean, it could be fatal for both mother and child. Catherine, I need you to try to stay calm, Amanda said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. I'm going to help you, but I need you to trust me and follow my instructions exactly. Lisa Park appeared with wide, frightened eyes. The captain wants to know if we need to divert to the nearest airport. We're currently over the North Atlantic, about 3 hours from Iceland. Yes, Amanda said without hesitation. Tell him to contact emergency medical services and prepare for an immediate diversion. We need to get on the ground as soon as possible. Victor's face had gone ashen. 3 hours? She can't wait 3 hours. Look at her. Catherine was now experiencing regular contractions, each one causing her to grip the armrests of her chair until her knuckles went white. Between contractions, she was struggling with severe nausea, and her vision continued to blur with the characteristic visual disturbances of eclampsia. The baby's coming, Catherine whispered, her voice filled with terror. It's too early. The baby's coming too early. Amanda made a split-second decision that would define the next several hours of their lives. Victor, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your wife is experiencing severe preeclampsia that's progressed to premature labor. This baby is going to be born on this aircraft, and we need to prepare for that reality right now. The color drained completely from Victor's face. Born here? But she's only 7 months pregnant. Can the baby survive? Babies born at 30 weeks have excellent survival rates with proper medical care, Amanda said, her voice calm but urgent. But we need to act fast and we need to work together. Lisa, I need you to find me every clean towel, blanket, and first aid supply on this aircraft. We're going to need hot water, and see if there's any alcohol or antiseptic for sterilization. I don't understand any of this, Victor said, his voice breaking. This wasn't supposed to happen. The doctor said she was stable for travel. Amanda turned to face him directly, her brown eyes intense with determination. Victor, I know. This is terrifying, but I need you to focus. Your wife and baby are depending on us right now. I've delivered dozens of premature babies, and while this isn't ideal circumstances, I know what I'm doing. Catherine cried out as another contraction hit, this one stronger and longer than the previous ones. Amanda, she gasped between breaths. I'm so scared. What if something happens to the baby? What if I can't do this? You can do this, Amanda said firmly, moving to kneel beside Catherine's chair. Women have been giving birth for thousands of years, and you have something most of them didn't have. You have me, and I specialize in exactly this situation. Lisa returned with an armload of supplies, her face pale but determined. I found towels, blankets, the first aid kit, and there's a bottle of vodka from the bar that we can use for sterilization. The captain says we're diverting to Reykjavik and should be on the ground in 2.5 hours. That's too long, Amanda said, assessing Catherine's rapidly progressing labor. This baby is coming much sooner than expected. Victor ran his hands through his hair, his usual calm completely gone. There has to be something we can do. Can't we slow the labor? Give her some kind of medication? At this point, trying to stop it would be riskier than letting it continue, Amanda said. Catherine's preeclampsia is putting enormous strain on her body. The best thing we can do for both mother and baby is to finish this delivery as safely and swiftly as we can. Suddenly, Catherine gripped Amanda's hand with unexpected strength. Promise me, she said urgently, her voice low. If something goes wrong, save the baby. I don't care what happens to me, just save him. Don't say that. Victor choked out, his voice thick with emotion. You're both going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen to you. Amanda met Catherine's fearful green eyes, seeing in them a mother's fierce love and willingness to give everything for her child. I promise I'll do all I can to save both of you. Amanda said seriously. But I need you to fight. Your baby will need his mother. How do you know it's a boy? Catherine managed a faint smile despite her pain. Just a hunch, Amanda replied. Call it nurse's intuition. The next hour blurred into tense, focused action. Amanda guided Lisa in setting up a makeshift delivery space in the open area of the plane, using blankets and towels to create as clean an environment as possible. Victor moved between holding Catherine's hand and pacing anxiously, feeling powerless despite all his experience as a business leader. Catherine's labor progressed quickly, her contractions growing stronger and more frequent. Amanda kept an eye on her blood pressure with the aircraft's basic medical kit and was alarmed to see it rising to dangerous levels. The preeclampsia was getting worse, increasing the risk of seizures or stroke. Between contractions, Catherine gasped, Amanda, I need to tell you something, just in case. Nothing will happen to you, Victor said, trying to sound certain but failing. Please, let me say this, Catherine insisted, tears running down her face. If my baby survives, I want you to know that Victor and I have been planning to start a foundation for maternal health. We have the resources, the contacts, the money. But what we're missing is someone who really understands what women like me go through. Amanda frowned, unsure where this was heading. What are you saying? I'm saying that after today, seeing you risk everything for strangers, I know you're the one who should lead this. Not from some Manhattan office, but on the ground, working directly with the women who need it most. Victor looked at her with a mix of admiration and fear. Catherine, we can talk about this later. Right now, let's focus on you and the baby. Another powerful contraction hit, and Catherine cried out. Amanda saw they were at the crucial moment. Catherine, I can see the baby's head. We're so close. When I tell you, I need you to push. The cramped cabin had become an emergency delivery room. Lisa assisted Amanda while Victor tried to offer support despite his panic. Amanda's experienced hands moved quickly but gently, guiding the fragile baby through the birth. Now, Catherine, push, Amanda urged. Catherine pushed with everything she had, her face red from the effort. Amanda saw more of the baby's head and felt a surge of urgency at how small and delicate he was. The head's out, Amanda said, steadying it carefully. One more big push for the shoulders. Victor was openly crying now, overwhelmed by the sight. Is the baby okay? Is he breathing? Almost there, Amanda said, fully focused. With one final effort from Catherine, the baby slid into Amanda's waiting hands, tiny, barely 4 pounds, with fragile skin and weak cries, but alive and breathing. It's a boy, Amanda announced, tears of relief running down her cheeks, as she wrapped the newborn in warm towels. He's breathing, Catherine. You have a son. Exhausted but conscious, Catherine slumped back. Is he okay? Let me see him. Amanda gently placed the baby on her chest, supporting him carefully. He's small, and his breathing's a little labored, which is normal for his age, but his color looks good and his heart's strong. Victor stared at his son in wonder and fear, his large hand nearly covering the baby's tiny body. The newborn's eyes were open, and his limbs moved with surprising strength. He's perfect, Victor whispered. Catherine, look at what you did. Look at him. But Amanda's attention stayed on Catherine, who was still in danger. Her blood pressure remained dangerously high, and Amanda could see signs of serious postpartum complications from the preeclampsia. Catherine, tell me how you're feeling. Amanda asked, checking her pulse and monitoring her alertness. Tired, Catherine murmured. So tired, but happy. He's beautiful, isn't he? He's absolutely beautiful, Amanda agreed, though she was growing increasingly concerned about Catherine's pallor and the amount of bleeding following the delivery. Catherine, I need you to stay awake and keep talking to me. Tell me about what you want to name him. We hadn't decided, Catherine said weakly. We were waiting to see him first. Victor, What do you think?" Victor was still staring at his son in amazement, but Amanda could see the fear creeping back into his expression as he noticed his wife's condition. "Whatever you want, darling. You did all the work." Catherine smiled faintly. "James, after his grandfather. James Victor Sterling." The baby, as if responding to his name, opened his eyes and seemed to focus on his mother's face. Despite being born 2 months premature under the most challenging circumstances imaginable, little James was displaying the fighting spirit that would define his entry into the world. Amanda continued monitoring both mother and baby as the aircraft began its descent toward Reykjavik. The emergency medical team would be waiting on the ground, but she knew that the next few hours would be critical for both Catherine and James. The preeclampsia could still cause seizures or organ failure, and the premature baby would need immediate specialized care to ensure his continued survival. Lisa appeared with updates from the cockpit. "The captain says we'll be landing in 40 minutes. Emergency medical teams are standing by, and they're preparing transport to the hospital." "Good," Amanda said, though she knew that 40 minutes could feel like an eternity when dealing with these complications. "We need to keep both of them stable until we can get proper medical support." Victor sat beside his wife, holding her hand while carefully touching his son's tiny fingers. "Amanda," he said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. You saved their lives." "We're not out of the woods yet," Amanda replied honestly, "but they're both fighters. James is breathing well on his own, which is remarkable for a 30-week baby, and Catherine made it through the delivery. We just need to get them to a hospital." As they began their final approach to Reykjavik, Amanda reflected on the extraordinary sequence of events that had brought her to this moment. A simple booking error had placed her in the right place at the right time to potentially save 2 lives, but she also knew that the real test would come in the days and weeks ahead, as James fought to overcome the challenges of his premature birth, and Catherine recovered from the serious complications of her pregnancy. The aircraft touched down with a gentle bump, and almost immediately, Amanda could hear the sirens of the emergency vehicles racing toward them. Within minutes, paramedics were boarding the aircraft with specialized equipment for both Catherine and the baby. "We'll take it from here," the lead paramedic said as his team quickly assessed the situation. "You did extraordinary work under impossible circumstances." As Catherine and James were carefully transferred to the waiting ambulances, Victor turned to Amanda with tears in his eyes. "Come with us," he said urgently. "Please, they're going to need you, and I don't want to face this without someone who understands what's happening." Amanda looked at the ambulances, then back at Victor's desperate face. Her original plans to visit her mother in Chicago seemed insignificant compared to the medical crisis still unfolding. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "I'll stay as long as they need me." As the ambulances raced through the streets of Reykjavik toward the hospital, Amanda held Catherine's hand while monitoring little James in his transport incubator. The fight for their lives was far from over, but they had survived the most dangerous phase of their ordeal. What none of them could anticipate was how this experience would change all of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. The intensive care unit at Landspítali University Hospital in Reykjavik buzzed with controlled urgency as the medical team worked to stabilize both Catherine and baby James. Amanda stood just outside the NICU, watching through the glass as a team of specialists examined the tiny infant she had delivered just hours earlier. Her clothes were still stained with evidence of the harrowing delivery, and exhaustion was beginning to settle into her bones, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Dr. Eric Magnuson, the head of neonatal intensive care, emerged from the NICU with a cautiously optimistic expression. He was a tall, lean man with graying temples and the kind of steady demeanor that came from years of dealing with life and death situations involving the most vulnerable patients. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, extending his hand. "I understand you delivered this baby under extraordinary circumstances. I have to say, your quick thinking and skill likely saved both their lives. Amanda felt a flush of relief mixed with continued worry. How are they doing? Is James going to be okay? Baby James is remarkable, Dr. Magnuson replied. For a 30-week infant delivered outside a medical facility, his condition is better than we could have hoped. His lungs are functioning adequately. On their own, though we're providing some supplemental oxygen as a precaution. His weight is good for his gestational age, and all his vital signs are stable. And Catherine? Amanda asked, though she could see the concern in the doctor's eyes. Mrs. Sterling's condition is more complex, he admitted. The preeclampsia caused significant strain on her cardiovascular system, and she's experiencing some kidney involvement that we're monitoring closely. She's stable for now, but she'll need to remain here for several days while we manage her blood pressure and ensure there are no further complications. Victor appeared at Amanda's side, looking haggard and overwhelmed. He had been shuttling between his wife's room and the NICU for the past several hours, trying to process the reality of becoming a father under such traumatic circumstances. "Doctor, can I see my son?" Victor asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Of course," Dr. Magnuson replied. "But I should prepare you for what you'll see. He's very small, and he's connected to several monitoring devices. It can be overwhelming for parents, especially after what you've all been through." As they entered the NICU, Amanda was struck by the familiar sounds and sights that had defined so much of her professional life. The soft beeping of monitors, the gentle whoosh of ventilators, and the controlled chaos of medical professionals caring for the tiniest and most fragile patients. But seeing James in this environment felt different somehow, more personal and emotionally charged than her usual clinical detachment. James lay in a transparent incubator, his tiny body dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding him. Thin wires monitored his heart rate and breathing, and a feeding tube had been inserted to ensure he received proper nutrition while his digestive system continued to develop. Despite all the medical apparatus, there was something undeniably vital and determined about the baby's presence. "He's so small," Victor whispered, his hand pressed against the glass of the incubator. "But he looks strong, doesn't he?" Amanda nodded, her professional eye assessing James's condition while her heart swelled with an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "He does look strong. See how he's moving his arms and legs? And his color is excellent. Those are all very positive signs for a baby born this early." A young nurse named Sigrid approached them with a gentle smile. "Would you like to touch him?" she asked Victor. Skin-to-skin contact is very beneficial for premature infants, and he's stable enough for brief interactions. Victor's hands trembled as Sigrid guided him through the proper procedure for reaching into the incubator. The moment his finger touched James's tiny palm, the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength, and Victor's composure finally cracked completely. "He knows me," Victor said through his tears. "He actually knows I'm his father." Amanda felt her own eyes filling with tears as she watched the profound moment of connection between father and son. In all her years of working in neonatal care, she had never experienced this kind of personal investment in a patient's outcome. James wasn't just another premature baby fighting for survival. He was a child whose first breath she had witnessed, whose life had literally passed through her. "Hands, Miss Rodriguez," Dr. Magnuson said quietly. "I'd like to speak with you privately if you have a moment." They stepped away from Victor and James to a quiet corner of the NICU. Amanda could see that the doctor had something significant to discuss, and she braced herself for potentially difficult news. "I've been reviewing the circumstances of this delivery," Dr. Magnuson began, "and I have to tell you that what you accomplished was nothing short of miraculous. Delivering a premature baby in an unpressurized aircraft cabin, with no medical equipment or assistance, should have resulted in tragedy. The fact that both mother and baby survived with minimal complications speaks to extraordinary skill and..." Quick thinking, Amanda felt uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what my training taught me to do. Any experienced nurse would have done the same thing. I disagree, Dr. Magnuson said firmly. I've been practicing neonatal medicine for 25 years, and I can count on one hand the number of people I would trust to handle that situation successfully. You have a gift, Miss Rodriguez, and I suspect you don't fully appreciate how rare that gift is. Before Amanda could respond, a commotion near Catherine's room drew their attention. A nurse was hurrying toward them with obvious urgency, and Amanda's heart immediately began racing with renewed worry. "Doctor," the nurse called, "Mrs. Sterling is asking for Miss Rodriguez. She's becoming quite agitated and insists she needs to speak with her immediately." Amanda and Dr. Magnuson hurried to Catherine's room, where they found her sitting up in bed despite the protests of her attending physician. Catherine's face was pale but determined, and her green eyes held an intensity that reminded Amanda of their earlier conversation about the Maternal Healthcare Foundation. "Amanda," Catherine said urgently as they entered the room, "thank God you're here. I've been thinking about what we discussed on the plane, and I need to ask you something important." "Catherine, you should be resting," Amanda said, moving to her bedside. "You've been through an incredible ordeal, and your body needs time to recover." "I'll rest later," Catherine said dismissively. "Right now I need to know if you meant what you said about wanting to help women who don't have access to proper prenatal care." Amanda glanced at Victor, who had followed them from the NICU with a confused expression. "Of course I meant it. Improving maternal health care outcomes has always been a passion of mine." Catherine reached for Amanda's hand with surprising strength. "Then I have a proposition for you. Victor and I have been planning to establish a foundation focused on maternal and infant health, but after today, after watching you save my life and my son's life, I know that you're exactly the person who should be leading that effort." "Catherine," Victor interjected gently, "perhaps this conversation should wait until you're feeling stronger." "No," Catherine said firmly. "This can't wait. Amanda, I want you to consider becoming the director of our foundation. Not just a consultant or advisor, but the person who shapes its mission and guides its work from the ground up." Amanda felt as though the floor had shifted beneath her feet. "Catherine, I'm incredibly honored, but I don't know anything about running a foundation. I'm a nurse, not a business executive or nonprofit administrator." "That's exactly why you're perfect for this role," Catherine insisted. "You understand the medical realities in a way that no business executive ever could. You've seen what happens when women don't have access to proper care, and you have the skills to make a real difference." Victor's expression had shifted from confusion to something approaching excitement. "Catherine's right," he said slowly. "We've been struggling with how to ensure that our foundation would actually make a meaningful impact rather than just throwing money at the problem. Having someone with your background and experience leading the effort would change everything." Amanda looked between the two of them, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were proposing. "I have a job in Denver. I have patients who depend on me, colleagues who rely on me. I can't just abandon all of that." "We're not asking you to abandon anything," Catherine said. "We're asking you to expand it. Think about how many more lives you could save if you had the resources to create mobile clinics, train healthcare workers in underserved areas, and develop programs that could prevent situations like what happened to your sister Isabella." The mention of Isabella hit Amanda like a physical blow. She had shared that painful memory with the Sterlings during their flight, never imagining that it would come back to influence such a momentous decision. "I need time to think about this," Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is a huge decision, and I can't make it while emotions are running so high." "Of course," Victor said. "Take all the time you need. But Amanda, I want you to know that this isn't just an emotional impulse from Catherine. We've been planning this foundation for months, and we have significant funding already committed. What we've been missing is someone with the passion and expertise to turn our vision into reality. Dr. Magnuson, who had been quietly observing the conversation, stepped forward with a thoughtful expression. Miss Rodriguez, if I may offer a perspective from someone who has spent his career in this field, the work you're describing could have an impact far beyond what any individual nurse, no matter how skilled, could achieve working within the traditional healthcare system. Amanda felt the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. Just hours earlier, she had been a nurse traveling home to visit her mother. Now she was being asked to consider reshaping her entire life around an opportunity that seemed almost too extraordinary to be real. "Can I see James again?" Amanda asked, needing a moment to process everything that was happening. "Of course," Victor said. "I think seeing him might help put everything in perspective." They returned to the NICU, where James was sleeping peacefully in his incubator. Despite all the medical equipment surrounding him, there was something profoundly serene about his presence. His tiny chest rose and fell with steady breaths, and occasionally his small hands would flex as if he were grasping for something in his dreams. "He's going to face challenges," Amanda said quietly, her professional knowledge informing her assessment. "Premature babies often deal with developmental delays, respiratory issues, and other complications as they grow. But he's already shown that he's a fighter, just like his mother," Victor said with obvious pride and affection. Amanda studied James's peaceful face and felt something shift inside her. This tiny baby represented everything she had dedicated her career to protecting and nurturing. But Catherine's proposal offered the possibility of extending that protection to countless other babies who might never have the chance to fight for their lives in a well-equipped NICU. "Tell me more about your vision for the foundation, Amanda." Saad, turning to Victor. "What kind of programs were you considering?" Victor's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "We were thinking about mobile clinics that could reach rural and underserved communities, educational programs for expectant mothers, training initiatives for healthcare workers in areas with limited resources, and research into preventable causes of maternal and infant mortality. And you have the funding to make this happen?" Amanda asked, still struggling to believe the scope of what they were discussing. "We have committed $50 million as initial funding," Victor replied, matter-of-factly, "with the potential for significant additional investment based on the foundation's early results and impact." Amanda felt dizzy at the mention of such an enormous sum. $50 million could fund hundreds of mobile clinics, train thousands of healthcare workers, and provide prenatal care to countless women who currently had no access to proper medical support. "There's something else," Catherine said from her hospital bed, where she had been listening to their conversation with obvious satisfaction. "We want to call it the Isabella Foundation, in honor of your sister and all the babies who didn't get the chance that James is getting." Amanda's breath caught in her throat. The idea of honoring Isabella's memory through a foundation dedicated to preventing other families from experiencing the same loss was both overwhelming and deeply meaningful. "I can see you're conflicted," Dr. Magnuson observed gently. "Perhaps it would help to know that we would be honored to have you maintain an affiliation with our hospital. You could use our facilities as a base for training programs and research initiatives related to the Foundation's work." "You've thought of everything," Amanda said with a shaky laugh. "It's almost as if you're trying to make it impossible for me to say no." "That's exactly what we're trying to do," Catherine admitted with a weak smile. "Amanda, I know this seems overwhelming, but sometimes life presents us with opportunities that are too important to let pass by. You saved my son's life today, but this foundation could save thousands of lives in the years to come." Amanda looked around at the faces surrounding her, Victor's hopeful expression, Catherine's determined gaze, Dr. Magnuson's encouraging nod, and most importantly, James's peaceful form in his incubator. Less than 12 hours ago, she had been a dedicated nurse with a stable career and predictable future. Now she was being offered the chance to transform her passion into something far greater than she had ever imagined possible. "If I were to consider this," Amanda said slowly, "I would want to maintain direct patient care responsibilities. I never want to lose touch with the hands-on work that made me passionate about this field in the first place." "Absolutely," Victor said immediately. "We would want you to structure the foundation however you think would be most effective. The whole point is to leverage your expertise and vision. And I would want to spend time researching existing programs and best practices before we launch anything. I don't want to duplicate efforts that are already working or make mistakes that could be avoided with proper preparation." "Take all the time you need," Catherine said. "We're not in a rush to launch. We want to do this right." Amanda took a deep breath and looked once more at James, whose very existence seemed to represent the miraculous possibility of life triumphing over impossible odds. In saving his life, she had discovered an opportunity to potentially save countless other lives. The symmetry of it felt almost too perfect to be coincidental. "I have one condition," Amanda said finally. "I want to be involved in James's care during his recovery here in Iceland. I need to see him through this crisis before I can even think about taking on something as massive as what you're proposing." "Done," Victor said immediately. "In fact, I was hoping you would say that. I can't imagine going through this without you." As Amanda looked around the NICU at the tiny patients fighting for their lives, she felt a sense of destiny settling over her. Whether through divine intervention, cosmic coincidence, or simple human compassion, she had been placed in exactly the right position to make a difference that could extend far beyond this single extraordinary day. The choice she was facing would change everything about her life, but it would also honor the memory of every baby like Isabella who had fought bravely but lost their battle. For the first time since Catherine had made her incredible offer, Amanda began to believe that perhaps she was exactly where she was meant to be. 3 weeks into James's stay at Lanspitali University Hospital, Amanda had become a familiar figure in the NICU corridors. She had extended her leave from Denver indefinitely, spending her days learning advanced neonatal techniques from Dr. Magnuson and his team while carefully monitoring James's progress. The tiny baby had overcome several early hurdles, including a brief respiratory setback and feeding difficulties, but was now thriving beyond everyone's expectations. Amanda stood beside James's incubator during the early morning hours, a time she had come to treasure for its quiet intimacy. The baby's eyes were open more frequently now, and he seemed to track movement with increasing awareness. His weight had increased steadily, and the feeding tube had been removed as he learned to nurse successfully. Every small milestone felt like a personal victory to Amanda, who had become deeply invested in his development. "You're early today," Dr. Magnuson observed as he approached for morning rounds. Over the past weeks, he and Amanda had developed a professional relationship built on mutual respect and shared dedication to their tiny patients. "I couldn't sleep," Amanda admitted. "I keep thinking about everything that's happened, everything that's been offered to me. It feels surreal." Dr. Magnuson nodded thoughtfully. "Major life transitions often feel that way." "Have you made any decisions about the Sterling Foundation?" "I think so," Amanda said quietly. "But I want to discuss something with Victor and Catherine first, something that's been weighing on my mind." "They're both doing remarkably well," Dr. Magnuson assured her. "Catherine's preeclampsia has resolved completely, and she's been cleared for travel whenever they feel ready to leave Iceland." As if summoned by their conversation, Victor appeared in the NICU doorway. His appearance had transformed over the past weeks from the polished businessman Amanda had first met to a more relaxed father figure. He wore casual clothes instead of expensive suits, and his eyes held a warmth that spoke of his growing confidence in his new role as a parent. "Good morning," Victor said softly, not wanting to disturb the other babies in the unit. "How's our boy doing today?" "See for yourself," Amanda replied, stepping aside so Victor could approach the incubator. James was awake and alert, his dark eyes seeming to focus on his father's face with increasing recognition. When Victor gently placed his finger against the incubator's porthole, James turned his head toward the sound of his voice with deliberate intention. "He knows me," Victor marveled, as he did every morning. "Every day he seems more aware, more present." "Premature babies often surprise us with their resilience and development," Dr. Magnuson explained. "James is exceeding our expectations in every measurable way. His lung function is excellent. His neurological responses are appropriate for his adjusted age, and his growth trajectory suggests he'll catch up to full-term babies relatively quickly." Victor's relief was palpable. "When do you think he'll be ready to go home?" "Another 2 to 3 weeks, depending on his continued progress," Dr. Magnuson replied. "We want to see him reach at least 5 pounds and demonstrate consistent feeding and temperature regulation before discharge." "Victor," Amanda said, "I was hoping to speak with you and Catherine today about the foundation. I've made some decisions, but I also have some requests that might change the scope of what you're envisioning." Victor's attention immediately sharpened. "Of course, Catherine will want to hear this too. She's been asking about your thoughts almost daily." They found Catherine in the family lounge, where she had been spending increasing amounts of time as her own recovery progressed. She looked remarkably healthy considering her ordeal, though Amanda could see the lingering fatigue that often followed complicated pregnancies. Catherine's face lit up when she saw Amanda approaching. "Please tell me you have news about the foundation," Catherine said without preamble. "The suspense has been killing me." Amanda took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would either strengthen their partnership or potentially derail it entirely. "I want to accept your offer to lead the Isabella Foundation, but I need to be completely honest about my vision for how it should operate." "We're listening," Victor said, settling into a chair beside his wife. "After spending these weeks here, working with Dr. Magnuson and observing how this hospital operates, I've realized that the most effective approach wouldn't be creating entirely new programs from scratch. Instead, we should focus on partnering with existing healthcare systems to expand and enhance their capabilities." Catherine leaned forward with interest. "What do you mean specifically?" "I mean that instead of building our own mobile clinics, we should identify rural hospitals and community health centers that are already serving underserved populations and help them expand their obstetric and neonatal capabilities. We could fund equipment upgrades, provide specialized training for their staff, and create telemedicine connections to major medical centers for consultation and support." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense from an efficiency standpoint. You'd be leveraging existing infrastructure rather than duplicating it." "Exactly," Amanda said, feeling encouraged by his response. "But there's more. I want the foundation to have a strong research component focused on preventable causes of maternal and infant mortality. Not just identifying problems, but developing practical solutions that can be implemented in resource-limited settings." "That aligns perfectly with our original vision," Catherine said enthusiastically. "What else?" Amanda hesitated, knowing that her next request was the most ambitious and potentially controversial. "I want to establish a fellowship program that brings healthcare workers from underserved areas to major medical centers for intensive training, then provides ongoing support when they return to their communities. And I want that program to be based here in Iceland, at least partially." Victor and Catherine exchanged surprised glances. "Here?" Victor asked. "Why Iceland?" "Because of what I've learned working with Dr. Magnuson and his team," Amanda explained. "Iceland has one of the lowest infant mortality rates in the world, and their approach to maternal care is incredibly comprehensive. But more importantly, They've developed systems that prioritize accessibility and prevention in ways that could be adapted to other settings. Dr. Magnuson, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped forward with obvious interest. "Miss Rodriguez, are you suggesting a formal partnership with our hospital?" "I'm suggesting something more ambitious than that," Amanda replied. "I'm proposing that we establish an international training center here that becomes a model for how the Isabella Foundation approaches maternal and infant health globally." Catherine's eyes were shining with excitement. "Amanda, that's brilliant. We could bring healthcare workers from around the world to learn best practices, then support them as they implement those practices in their home communities. It would require significant investment," Victor said, though his tone suggested he was already calculating the possibilities rather than objecting to the cost. "Housing for fellows, expanded training facilities, additional staff positions. I know it's ambitious," Amanda admitted, "but I believe it could have exponentially greater impact than a more traditional foundation model. Instead of just providing services directly, we'd be creating a network of trained professionals who could transform maternal and infant care in their own regions." Dr. Magnuson was nodding enthusiastically. The Icelandic medical community would welcome such a partnership. "Our outcomes in maternal and infant health are excellent, but we've always wished we could share our approaches more broadly. There's one more thing," Amanda said, knowing she was about to make her most personal and potentially difficult request. "I want James to be part of this somehow. Not exploiting his story, but honoring what he represents about the importance of specialized neonatal care." Victor's expression grew protective. "What do you mean?" "I mean that his story, the circumstances of his birth and survival, embodies everything the Foundation is trying to achieve. Babies like James survive because of skilled medical intervention and access to advanced care. But thousands of babies born under similar circumstances don't survive because they don't have access to that same level of care." Catherine reached for Victor's hand, understanding immediately what Amanda was suggesting. "You want James to be the face of the Foundation, in a way." "Not his face literally," Amanda clarified, "but his story, told appropriately and with respect for his privacy as he grows up. The Foundation could document his development, the challenges he overcomes, and the interventions that help him thrive. It would make the work we're doing tangible and personal for donors and partners." Victor was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with the implications of what Amanda was proposing. As a father, his instinct was to protect his son from public attention. But as someone who had experienced firsthand the difference that skilled medical care could make, he understood the power of James's story to save other lives. "We would have complete control over how his story is shared?" Victor asked finally. "Absolutely," Amanda assured him. "Nothing would be published or shared without your explicit approval. And as James grows older, he would have the right to determine his own level of involvement with the Foundation." "I like it," Catherine said firmly. "James's survival was miraculous, but it wasn't just luck. It was the result of Amanda's training, the medical care he's receiving here, and access to resources that most families don't have. If sharing his story can help other families access that same level of care, then we should do it." Victor looked toward the NICU, where his son was continuing his remarkable recovery. "James is going to grow up knowing that his life was saved by someone who chose to dedicate herself to helping others. Maybe being part of that mission, in an age-appropriate way, could be a positive influence on his development." Amanda felt a surge of relief and excitement as she realized that the Sterlings were embracing her vision completely. "There's one final element I want to discuss. I believe the Foundation should be based primarily here in Iceland, at least for the first several years. The International Training Center, the research initiatives, the administrative operations, all of it centered here where we can build something truly innovative." "What about your position in Denver?" Catherine asked. "Would you be giving that up entirely?" I would maintain consulting relationships with hospitals in the United States, and the foundation would certainly work with American healthcare systems, Amanda explained. But I believe our greatest impact will come from building something new rather than trying to reform existing systems from within. Dr. Magnuson stepped forward with obvious enthusiasm. Miss Rodriguez, I can speak for the hospital administration when I say that we would be honored to partner with the Isabella Foundation in creating such a program. The potential for improving global maternal and infant health outcomes through this approach is extraordinary. Victor stood and walked to the window overlooking Reykjavik's harbor, where fishing boats were returning with their morning catch. Amanda, 3 weeks ago you saved my wife's life and delivered my son under impossible circumstances. Now you're proposing to use that experience as the foundation for transforming maternal health care globally. The scope of what you're suggesting is breathtaking. Is that a yes? Amanda asked, hardly daring to hope. It's an enthusiastic yes, Catherine said before Victor could respond. Amanda, you've taken our basic idea and transformed it into something far more ambitious and potentially impactful than we ever imagined. Victor turned back from the window with a smile that transformed his entire demeanor. Catherine's right. What you're proposing isn't just a foundation, it's a movement. And I can't think of anyone better suited to lead it. Amanda felt tears welling in her eyes as the magnitude of what they were committing to began to sink in. I want to start immediately with planning and research. We should spend the next several months while James is recovering to develop detailed proposals, identify potential partners, and begin the process of establishing our presence here in Iceland. Consider it done, Victor said. I'll have my legal team begin working on the international incorporation issues, and we can start identifying properties for the training center. Dr. Magnuson cleared his throat diplomatically. If I may make a suggestion, there's a medical facility about 20 minutes from here that recently closed due to budget constraints. The building is modern and well-equipped, and it might be perfect for conversion to a training center. Perfect, Catherine said. Victor, can you arrange for us to tour the facility this week? As they discussed the practical details of launching the Isabella Foundation, Amanda felt a profound sense of purpose settling over her. The random booking error that had placed her on the Sterling's flight was beginning to feel less like coincidence and more like destiny. James's premature birth had created the catalyst for something that could potentially save thousands of lives in the years to come. There's something else, Amanda said as their planning session wound down. I want to document everything we're doing, not just for accountability purposes, but to create a model that other organizations can replicate. The Isabella Foundation shouldn't be the only organization taking this approach. You want to give away our methods? Victor asked, though his tone suggested curiosity rather than concern. I want to multiply our impact, Amanda replied. If we develop effective approaches to training, partnership, and implementation, those approaches should be shared widely. The goal isn't to build a large organization. It's to transform how the global health community addresses maternal and infant mortality. Catherine clapped her hands together with delight. Amanda, you continue to exceed our expectations. Yes. Absolutely yes to all of it. As they prepared to return to the NICU to check on James, Amanda felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they were undertaking. Less than a month ago, she had been a dedicated but relatively unknown neonatal nurse, working in a single hospital. Now she was preparing to launch an international foundation that could potentially revolutionize maternal and infant healthcare globally. The responsibility was daunting, but as she looked at James sleeping peacefully in his incubator, she knew that every challenge would be worth facing if it meant that other babies would have the same chance at survival that he was getting. The Isabella Foundation would be built on the foundation of one miraculous survival, but its impact would extend far beyond any single life saved. Walking back to the NICU with Victor and Catherine, Amanda realized that her life had been fundamentally transformed by a series of events that began with a simple booking error. Sometimes the most profound changes came from the most unexpected circumstances, and she was grateful that she had been brave enough to embrace the opportunity when it presented itself. 18 months later, Amanda stood in the gleaming lobby of the Isabella Foundation's International Training Center in Reykjavik, watching as the third cohort of healthcare fellows from 12 different countries gathered for their orientation ceremony. The converted medical facility had been transformed into a state-of-the-art educational center, complete with simulation labs, telemedicine suites, and residential accommodations for visiting professionals. Through the large windows, she could see James Sterling playing in the center's child care facility, a vibrant toddler who showed no signs of his premature beginning. His development had been remarkable, exceeding every milestone and becoming a living testament to the power of specialized neonatal care. Victor and Catherine had relocated permanently to Iceland, with Victor managing his business remotely while Catherine served as the Foundation's community outreach coordinator. Amanda, called Dr. Esperanza Morales, a brilliant obstetrician from rural Guatemala who was completing her fellowship program. The documentary crew is ready for your interview. Amanda nodded, adjusting the professional blazer she now wore as director of the foundation. The documentary team was creating a film about the Isabella Foundation's first year of operations, showcasing the network of healthcare improvements that had emerged from their training and partnership programs. "How many hospitals are we partnered with now?" asked the documentary director as cameras began rolling. 87 healthcare facilities across 32 countries, Amanda replied with evident pride. Each partnership is unique, tailored to the specific needs and resources of the community, but they all share our core focus on preventable maternal and infant mortality. Can you give us some specific examples of impact? Dr. Morales here has implemented our telemedicine consultation program in her region of Guatemala, reducing infant mortality by 40% in just 8 months. Our fellow from Nigeria, Dr. Adebayo, has trained over 200 community health workers in early identification of pregnancy complications. The stories of transformation are happening every day. The interview continued, but Amanda's attention was drawn to a commotion near the entrance. Catherine was walking quickly toward her, holding James's hand, with tears streaming down her face. Amanda's heart immediately began racing, fearing some kind of medical emergency. "Amanda," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion, "you need to see this." She handed Amanda a tablet displaying an email message. The sender was Maria Santos, a young mother from a remote village in Peru whose local clinic had received equipment and training through the Isabella Foundation's partnership program. The message was brief but powerful. "My daughter Sophia was born last night, 6 weeks early, just like your story about baby James. But because of the training you provided to our clinic and the equipment your foundation donated, she is alive and healthy." The nurses knew exactly what to do, and they had the tools they needed to help her breathe and survive. "I wanted you to know that my Sophia is alive because of what you started after saving James. Thank you for saving both our babies." Attached to the email was a photo of a tiny but alert baby girl, surrounded by basic but effective neonatal care equipment in a small rural clinic thousands of miles away. Amanda stared at the photo, overwhelmed by the profound connection between James's dramatic birth and this small baby's survival in Peru. The Foundation's work had come full circle, creating a direct line from one miraculous rescue to another life saved through improved care and training. "There are dozens of messages like this," Catherine continued. "Families from around the world writing to thank the Foundation for training programs, equipment donations, and consultation services that made the difference between life and death for their children." Victor approached from across the lobby, having overheard the conversation. "Amanda, I have something to tell you as well." The World Health Organization wants to formally adopt our training model as a recommended approach for improving maternal and infant health outcomes in underserved regions. Amanda felt dizzy with the magnitude of what they had accomplished. What had begun as a simple act of medical intervention during a flight emergency had grown into an international movement that was saving lives on multiple continents. "There's more," Victor said with a smile that suggested he was saving the best news for last. "The Icelandic government wants to nominate you for the Nobel Peace Prize for your contributions to global health equity." Amanda laughed despite her tears. "That's ridiculous. I'm just a nurse who got lucky and had the opportunity to help." "You're a nurse who transformed luck into lasting change," Catherine corrected. "James's survival was the beginning of something extraordinary, but what you've built since then has saved hundreds of lives and will save thousands more." James appeared at Amanda's side, tugging on her jacket with the persistent determination of a toddler. "Miss Amanda," he said in his clear, bright voice, "Mama says you helped me when I was tiny." "Thank you." Amanda knelt down to James's eye level, seeing in his healthy, curious face the miracle that had started everything. "You helped too, James. You showed everyone how strong babies can be when they have people fighting for them." "Can I help more babies?" James asked with the earnest concern that had become characteristic of his developing personality. "You already are," Amanda assured him. "Every day, babies around the world are getting better care because your story showed people how important it is to be ready to help." As the documentary crew captured the spontaneous interaction between Amanda and James, she realized that the true measure of their success wasn't in awards or recognition, but in moments like Sophia's birth in Peru and countless other stories of survival that were unfolding around the world. The Isabella Foundation had grown beyond Amanda's wildest imaginings, but its core mission remained unchanged, ensuring that no baby would die from preventable causes simply because their family lacked access to skilled medical care. From a chance encounter on a private jet to an international network of healthcare partnerships, the journey had been extraordinary, but Amanda knew it was only the beginning. Looking around at the fellows from around the world, the advanced training facilities, and most importantly, at James's bright, healthy face, Amanda felt a profound sense of gratitude for the series of coincidences that had brought her to this moment. Sometimes the most important work of our lives emerges from the most unexpected circumstances, and she was honored to have been in the right place at the right time to make a difference that would echo through generations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.